Thank you very much, our Master of Ceremony. Good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, honorable speakers. A very good evening from the United States. I'm very sorry I cannot join you in person in Malaysia because I have another task from my government to go to the States. But it's a very great pleasure to take part in this very important summit on the World Digital Economy and Technology Summit. And I would first of all, thank the KSI Strategic Institute for Asia Pacific for organizing this summit, important summit, and also to include the participation of the youth and to include the agenda on youth, particularly on closing the digital divide. So, honorable speakers, ladies and gentlemen, our session today, the title is Closing the Digital Divide, Youth and Social Enterprise. Before I start, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Lydia Natania. I'm from Indonesia. And together with the ASEAN Youth Organization, we are a youth-led organization based in Southeast Asia region. And our volunteers, our members, they are very active in promoting youth development in the regions. We conducted events, we conducted many capacity building programs for the youth, including about social entrepreneurships and also for digital literacy. So I'm very pleased to be here. And before we proceed, I want to greet our honorable speakers. So first in this panel, we have Mr. Fabian Bigar, Chief Executive Officer, Strategic Management Office Corporation, or MyDIGITAL, Malaysia. Good afternoon, Mr. Fabian. How are you? Thank you so much. Our second speaker, we have Ms. Doan Kieu from the founder, YellowBlocks, and Create 42 from Vietnam. Hi, Ms. Doan. Hi, very nice to meet you. And our third speaker is Ms. Sirivimol Kitaphanich, Managing Director from Ruen Organic Farm from the Thailand. Good afternoon, Ms. Kitaphanich. And we have Mr. Chhem Siriwat, Director of the Center for Inclusive Digital Economy, Asian Vision Institute from Cambodia. Good afternoon, Mr. Siriwat. And we also have Dr. Maylin Fung, Chair, Co-founder, People-Centered Internet from the USA. Good afternoon, Dr. Fung. It's a very great series of panel and from the background itself. So before we proceed with the first question, I want to give a bit of context of how this session would be. So we have an interactive discussion with the speakers later on for our participants who are joining in person. Maybe if you have a question, you can also ask directly to our speakers. And we also have specific questions directed to our speakers based on their backgrounds. So Excellencies, distinguished panelists, and also ladies and gentlemen, in this topic, it's a very great honor that this topic is the last, because over these past days, we have explored topics about digital transformation, about digital economy, different points of view from technology, economy, workforce, sustainability, advancement of technology, and so on and so forth. But now, particularly in this topic, we will discuss two main points. One is the inclusion of youth in this topic, how the youth not only participate, but how they can also contribute to address the digital divide or to accelerate through the youth and social enterprise programs and other initiatives. The second one is we are going to address the gaps. There are so many gaps in our regions: internet connectivity, digital literacy. I think we will learn a lot from our panelists today. And I just want to flag, there's one report from Google, Temasek Holdings, Bain and Company in 2021. It said, the report said that more than 75% of the population in Southeast Asian countries already have access to the internet. However, 40 million people from Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, and Thailand came online for the very first time because of the pandemic. So the disruption of pandemic opens ways for new technological opportunities. So it's one way of maybe background to spark the discussion. So for our panelists, we have one general question I want to direct to all of you. So the question is, it's going to be a short question, and please answer it in a short answer. Could you mention one aspect, or maybe just one adjective, one word? What is a strong point, a point from the youth, which might contribute to address the digital divide and accelerate digital transformation? What is only one strong point or one adjective, strong point from the youth? I would like to start with Mr. Fabian Bigar.
I think the young, they are very curious to learn new things.
Yeah. That's very true. Curious to learn. Thank you so much. From Ms. Doan?
For me, it would be the new perspectives that they can bring to the table.
Okay, really cool. New perspectives and ideas. So curiosity, ideas, perfect. Miss Sirivimol?
For me, it would be new inspiration that you can access around the world.
Okay, new inspirations. The youth is always like related to the future. How about the hopes? So thank you for these inspirations. Mr. Chhem Siriwat.
Yes, for me, the word is mindset. Sometimes when we think of digital transformation, we only think about technology, issues at the technical level, but it's really about the mindset transformation. Thank you.
Very nice. Digital about the mindset. This is one of the role of the youth has been spoken in a lot of meetings. How people maybe from the age they are not young anymore, but they have this youth mindset, and it's very important when we want to talk about the youth. Thank you for this. Last but not least, Dr. Fung.
I want to say I think youth have energy and hunger to make something of their lives, but also a better future. I think the young generation has the responsibility, but the eagerness to generate a better future.
That's wonderful to close our first question. So can we have a big round of applause to our panelists? I am not there, but I hope everyone is like giving the I hope you can already feel the youthful spirit. It's a youth session, so energy is very important, curiosity about what they can bring to the table, inspirations, mindset, energy and hunger, how they want to work for the better of the future. Thank you very much for these words. We'll come back again at the end of our session. Now we want to get deeper from our panelists' backgrounds and their work. We will start again with Mr. Fabian. So Mr. Fabian, from your background, we know that you are involved more into the Malaysia digital economic boom. So maybe you can explain to us what is it, and since we are talking also about the youth, how does this digital economic blueprint also address the inclusion of youth, and how they can also, and it also relates to the digital entrepreneurship. Over to you.
Thank you. For the audience who are not Malaysians, the Malaysia Digital Economy Blueprint actually was released or published sometime last year in February. So it actually encapsulates our ambition to become the leading digital economy in the region by the year 2030. So that's a period of actually roughly 10 years. It covers two Malaysia plans. There is the 12th Malaysia plan and the 13th Malaysia plan. The Malaysia plans are our 5-year development plans. Okay. So what it essentially covers is actually the programs and initiatives that will put us there. So we do this by addressing the 6 challenges that we identified that is crucial for us to being a digitally developed country. Namely, number 1, of course, just transformation of the public sector, digital transformation of the public sector. It has to be on par with the private sector to be able to serve the entire population. Number 2, of course, to set up the ecosystem for economic development. So, it covers the economy. Number 3 is society. Society meaning, you want to make sure you narrow the digital divide. You want to make sure that nobody is left behind. So there is this, policy trust on society. Okay. Number 4 is connectivity. Again, making sure the entire country, is connected. After the plan, we want to make sure. In fact, midway through, we thought by 2020, end of 2024, early 2025, the whole country should be connected, right? Then after that, you have talent, making sure our, the young, those who are in school, and the future workforce, and those who are in the workforce is ready. They are ready, future-ready workforce, and also the existing ones, their job may be displaced, so you want to pivot them towards the digital economy. And number 6 is security, trust in the ecosystem. You want to make sure that the society is comfortable. There is trust that, it alludes to cybersecurity. Otherwise, people will not embrace the digital era if they don't trust the system. Yeah. So you need all these 6 elements. You need to prepare the country, towards digital economy. You need to solve all these problems or address some of the issues in these 6 areas. So there are initiatives that cover each and one of the every one of the trusts, right? So when it comes to the youth, of course, you can see in under the talent policy trust, it talks about how do you ensure children have access to digital technologies, the classrooms, the children, even the teachers, how are they skilled, right? And then we have programs like MyDIGITAL, Maker Schools, to equip them with the minds, to equip them with the so-called computational skills, both the teachers and the students, so that they can, to inculcate the culture of innovative thinking. And then when you talk about inclusion under the society cluster, we want to make sure prepare the social enterprises who are actually coming out with solutions for society's need are also well skilled in this. Make sure they're being prepared, or and also help them, to be able to contribute to society. Then you talk about infrastructure. Of course, connectivity is one that to make sure that there's no pockets in the country that are left behind. So this essentially talks about that's why these are the things that the blueprint talks about, and also there's initiatives that to be undertaken by the various agencies in the government, as well as the participation of the private sector as well. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fabian. And it's very timely, and thank you for sharing the Malaysia Digital Economic Blueprint, and also how also it includes the youth's inclusion. And you also mentioned the importance of upskilling the youth, and for the schools, for the teachers, for those who are in the education sector. It's actually timely because now parallel happening in Paris, France right now is the pre-summit for the transforming education system. And I was part of the drafting committee. We had the meeting in Asia, in Bangkok, with the Asia Pacific Minister of Education's meeting, and the aspect of digital literacy and also the skills for not only the students but also the teachers are very highlighted, and also the infrastructure. But in terms of infrastructure, we see a lot of gaps. So from this, I would like to go to Mr. Chhem Siriwat. As you work a lot from the think tank sector, so from the point of view in the regional, maybe in Southeast Asia or maybe beyond, what are the gaps between the current reality and efforts to promote and support digital entrepreneurship ecosystem? I'm sure there are already a lot of initiatives, a lot of ways, but how are a lot of regions they are still have like slower, for example, rate of digital literacy, and many students still cannot have access, for the youth cannot have access to adequate internet, for example. This first. Over to you, Mr. Siriwat.
Yes, thank you for your question. So regarding digital entrepreneurship, the ecosystem, the gaps between what we're doing to promote and the current reality, I think that the main problem here is the overcomplication. Because now, digital has become a buzzword. If you put digital in front of everything, it becomes very fancy, it becomes very cool. And I think there is not so much mutual understanding on that matter. I've heard all kinds of opinions and perspectives related to digital. Some people related to marketing, digital marketing. Some people related to purely an IT topic that is very technical, that you have to be an IT expert or having some sort of IT background. And the most common one that I see is that people like to bunch together all of the new and advanced technologies, such as 5G, AI, blockchain, IoT, all in one sentence, saying that, for example, let's come up with the best digital training program, in the country, in the world. We're going to train everyone on AI, 5G, IoT, blockchain, but
everyone.
That isn't, what we need. And sometimes, from experience from our institute and what we're trying to do with capacity building in the digital sector and the field is to kind of break it down and simplify. Know who is our audience, who are our target participants, what can they really utilize in the professional world, what can they do to help their organizations, their institutes, and it really depends which direction you come from. So in my opinion or my perspective, when we develop some capacity building programs, so far we've had 2 iterations. So the first of which was the Young Digital Leaders Program, and the second is the Women Digital Entrepreneurship Program. So again, it might be contradicting to what I said earlier, that it sounds very fancy, but if I were to, let's say, summarize it, that the first one, related to inclusion of the youth, is to focus on the development and capacity building of soft skills for those already technical professionals. So what we did is that we gathered some IT professionals from the private sector, working in different industries, different fields, and basically what they were lacking, we saw, was not their hard skills. They already had the technical capability, understanding, and know-how, but the problem that they faced at the workplace was their lack of communication or miscommunication with non-IT departments or teams. And so that created a huge gap. In terms of hard skills, everything was there, but in terms of the internal communication for their workflow, for the exchange of ideas, it was lacking. And I think overall, what we tried to do was promote the 4 C's, right, of the 21st century skills. Communication, creativity, critical thinking, and collaboration, right? So basically, in the context of, let's say, a typical IT team, they have the technical capacity and capability, but really pushing on their soft skills. So how can they work together better as a team? And also, how can they work, inter-department or with other departments who don't have, all the understanding? Sometimes they overcomplicate things. And so the second of which, in the inclusion efforts, what we've tried to do is also on women digital entrepreneurship. So I guess coming from a different direction again, in this context, we reach out to those small business owners, SMEs, startups, and really trying to push that, again, we don't have to create a very extensive and complicated program. We had our, let's say, kickoff meeting, with stakeholders from private, public, civil society, and so on. And we reached the same issue again. When we looked at our program, all the suggested topics were, as I said, 5G, AI, blockchain, IoT. And then when we look at the participants, they were shocked. They had no idea. They didn't know how they were going to use it in the workplace. So after many revisions, we figured that, what's more important is, the ability to navigate digital applications and platforms, how to use social media, basic understanding of cybersecurity to protect your information and your assets. So basically just trying to simplify everything, make it more practical. And this is what we try to do from our, let's say, inclusion efforts, capacity building with digital entrepreneurship. So I'll just leave my answer at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Siriwat. You really put it really well, very well put. And it's true that how a lot of trainings, they put so many stuffs, they put so many topics to make it seems like, oh, it's a very good training programs, or it's a very good programs, not only for the youth, but also for the women and for the others who need this kind of training. Can I quickly follow up on you? Just in a short one, do you think we need a standardized curriculum, for example, or maybe standardized training program for digital materials to have like this starting point?
I mean, again, in my opinion, I don't think that there is, one size fits all or standardized curriculum. It really depends on who is your target participant or audience. If that individual or group comes from a technical background, maybe there should be more balance. So again, focusing on soft skills and the 4 C's. However, if we come from, let's say, a non-technical background or not having, IT experience and capabilities, then, it's not necessary. I've seen many non-IT experts who enter these training programs who want to learn more, but when it becomes too complicated, too technical, they don't get anything out of it. So maybe as a, let's say, technology manager or technology communicator, you don't necessarily have to be an expert on the content, but at least you should understand the basics and be able to communicate it rather than throwing around fancy technical terminology. That won't benefit anyone. So I think it really depends which side you come from, but the most important is to consider that from the beginning and not to put it all into under one roof. Thank you.
Thank you so much for highlighting this. It's a very good point, especially when we see a lot of topics, a lot of discussions and a lot of debates about determining the curriculum, what do the youth needs, but sometimes it is one-sided. So the organizer think, okay, this is what they need, this is what they need to know, but they don't really have this consultation, they don't have this dialogue with those who will get benefits from this program. So thank you for highlighting that. I would like to move to Dr. Maylin Fung. We are still discussing on the gaps, and one of the highlight in our region specifically is about the infrastructure. And Dr. Maylin Fung, as you worked with, trying to provide like internet coverage across the region, across the world, like how do you see the challenges and opportunities to make this happen, and how to maybe minimize the gap between the rural and also urban areas?
This is a critical issue for all countries. I'm delighted to be here speaking at the KSI Strategic Institute for Asia Pacific, because I'm originally from Singapore, and I feel still, even though I live in the US, very much part of ASEAN, and I really believe in the potential and future of ASEAN. The challenge to bring this to ASEAN is whether the telecom companies and internet service providers will fight having faster, better, cheaper competition, because they will resist. It's natural for them. But a country like Bulgaria, they opened up all the licensing for internet service providers. And a small country like that ended up with over 3,000 service providers that drove down the price of internet coverage access and provided much greater coverage. Last month, I was at WSIS, the World Summit on the Information Society in Geneva, where all 32 UN agencies come together with the regulators of telecom and ICT in 193 countries. The highest priority was bridging the digital divide. So at a global and national level, voices are speaking up. Now the opportunity is for youth to seize this moment of full commitment to digital transformation. People are saying all the right things, but where is the action? Youth has an opportunity to drive the action. Youth could start businesses offering internet access, offering digital training. This is happening in US rural villages and towns and in Native American tribes. My organization, People-Centered Internet, helped start the Tribal Resource Center, which works with Native American tribes to start to operate their own internet services. In South Africa, I met a young man. His name is Luvoyo Rani. He started a chain of internet cafes in the poorest of the poor townships in South Africa. He had energy, vision, and a hunger to achieve. And this began when he was young because he was teaching accounting and computing in a high school. He realized there was a business opportunity for internet cafes and computer training. When I talked to him 2 years ago, he had already started 42 internet cafes and training centers with special attention to women, handicapped people, and young people. He trained them to become entrepreneurs. And for the best of them, he offered them the chance to start their own internet cafe. He's driving digital transformation in his country. The name of the company is silolu.com. And I really want to say youth can seize this opportunity. And especially since there's a divide between urban and rural digital infrastructure, that's an opportunity for youth, especially cooperatives in the US. Cooperatives help bring electricity to the rural areas because it was very expensive to get electricity there. But instead, people founded cooperatives to bring electricity. The same thing can happen in Southeast Asia, all across Southeast Asia. In Indonesia, there's a ministry of SMEs and cooperatives. Other ministries of cooperatives could be starting cooperatives to bring digital and internet cafes and digital entrepreneurship training to all the areas. And finally, credit for SMEs is hugely needed for young people to have the chance to start these businesses. India has started the account aggregator program to widely expand access to credit. Kenya's M-Pesa, the digital money, has really increased access to the internet all across Kenya, which now has the highest rate of internet access in Africa. These are examples from around the world that ASEAN can learn from and hopefully do even better.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Fung. I think it's very important also how you try to put this in the other perspective, because when we are discussing about trainings for or internet accessibility, we see the youth as beneficiaries. They received the internet or they got the internet connection. But how if those who already have internet access can make business out of it, and how they can make this like a sporadic a movement for the others who also think it in a business or a potential for developing social entrepreneurship, for example. I think it's a very important how we try to make this discussion and conversation to see it in a very different perspective. And from this point, I would like to go to Miss Doan Kieu. As a founder from YellowBlocks and Create 42, we are very sure that you have success stories in how you built your companies, for example, from the YellowBlocks or Create 42 that also impacted the youth entrepreneurs. Could you share with us some of these success stories? Over to you.
Yes, thank you. It's my honor to share today in the inaugural World Digital Economy Forum. So about YellowBlocks and Create 42, we are the first private consulting firm that actually specialize in emerging technologies and frontier technology. So me, myself, I have a very deep background in computer science. Used to spend 8 years in Finland, study computer science, telecommunications. And when I came back to Vietnam, I start to develop like other soft skills like business development and marketing and communications. And then I see like the huge gap between like the technical team and also like the business team. And I think like, and then I found the way to be the bridge, to bridge the gap between like the business needs, the corporate, and so on. So for the last 6 years, have been dedicated most of my time in supporting Vietnam government, Singapore government, and Australian government, as well as leading like corporates in the region to do digital transformation, as well as connecting them to like the startups. And when we talk about startup in frontier technologies like AI and blockchain, most of them come from the younger population. And never before in the history, now we see like the unprecedented accelerated growth of digital transformation, because like we have no other choice. Like COVID pushed everything forward. And as you see the report from Deloitte and KPMG, basically during this COVID pandemic, in the 2 years, we have the growth of digital transformation for like 10 years. So everything is pushed forward, and there's a pressure, there's a huge like disruption, and of course like a lot of confusion. But when we talk about social enterprise, I think there's one unchanged thing. We have been having social enterprise since like the early days, even before any fancy technology is available, right? So the core thing about social enterprise is more about finding the gap in that the private sector and public sector cannot resolve it. And usually it comes from the younger generation, because they are the one who comes from actual market needs. They come from like that target audience, target demography. And sometimes it's a new solutions to an existing problem. And why I'm so passionate about frontier technology in specific and technology in general is that technology is the tool to really like help us to scale up the impact of anything. So not only social enterprise, but any business and so on. But for this discussion, it's more about how we can tap into like the untapped resources. And usually social enterprise also enable the usually like excluded people. So for example, in Vietnam, I work closely with UNDP and the United Nations to have some kind of like social challenge and competitions for the youth. So during the COVID time, we have what we call the hack COVID. So how to hack through the COVID time. And you can see like out of like the 10,000 submissions, even high school students, university students, and just young graduates. And you see like the diversity of their solutions. And sometimes it's not that complicated, like even some of the winning prize, it's some entertaining songs just to lift up the mood of the people. But we can see like the different perspective, different mindset, and different way of solving the problem from the youth. And I think like social enterprise in specific, and also like digital businesses in general, is a way to push forward the economy, because basically we have no other choice. Like now when the access between border is so limited physically, and now like the openness of the internet access and so on, I think the internet economy and digital economy is growing more as ever. And in Vietnam, and I think in Malaysia too, I think that we are quite active in catching that wave. And Vietnam is now like the top 3 destination in Southeast Asia for internet economy investment, behind like Indonesia and Singapore. And we also see a lot of unicorn, like our first unicorn was in the last 6 years, but now we have already 4 unicorns. And recently we have a breaking game like AC Infinity, a blockchain startups that recently became also the unicorn. And blockchain technology in Vietnam has also been a very hot destination for technology development. So all of that one bundled with like the impact viewpoint, we also try to kind of like build awareness in terms of the UNDP's SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. So for the last 3 years, I have been promoting SDGs in Vietnam. And what more interesting is that 3 years ago, when we first talked about SDGs in Vietnam, 70% of the young population, they already hear about it. But like only 30% of like the people in the traditional corporates, because I work a lot with the C levels in the traditional family business or the corporates. And most of the time, the second generation always know about SDGs, and yeah, I know about this. We are also trying to do this and that, following the SDG goal, but their parents might never have heard of that. So I see that is a lot of changes and a lot of openness in this. And even though, like, in terms of the economy, I think there's some shift in the industry and revolution. But in terms of the social impact, I think this is also a very prime time for technology to actually accelerate the growth of the impact. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and congratulations also, Ms. Doan. Very, very impressive works, and it's a very good examples for the young entrepreneurs, not only in Vietnam, but I believe also in a lot of sectors in regions in Southeast Asia. And it's wonderful that you want to come back and you want to also build your country. And I think it's a very good message for the youth to also contribute in how they can accelerate their career, they can accelerate their impact, but they also don't forget about the other youth who are still in the process of learning. So like what Mr. Fabian also said earlier about making sure that no one is left behind, it's one of the ways of how we want to discuss on this digital divide. And thank you for sharing about SDGs. It's a good word to connect to our next speaker. So Ms. Sirivimol, we know that you have worked with the organic farm. I saw the profile, it's very wonderful. I would love to visit you in Chiang Mai and to visit the farm directly. So we are talking about sustainable development sectors, and we see a lot of agro-business sectors and how a lot of programs, digitalization programs to accelerate and push the development sectors or entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurships business to grow with the help of digital programs. So could you kindly share with us the first one is the challenges and opportunities faced by social entrepreneurs in the sustainable development sectors. For example, you are working with the organic farm. Maybe it's not as exotic, for example, with the others, digital enterprises, for example. Like what are the challenges and opportunities in your view?
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me for the speaker in the forum. I'm very happy to be here. So first of all, I would like to talk about the challenges first. That for the digital transformation, sometimes it's not so eco-friendly because we all have to own each computer to communicate or a mobile phone. For before this, about 7 years ago, where I stay in the farm, no one around there even have a mobile phone. But now people can access the mobile phone. But this means that sometimes in the rural area, the kids see people have mobile phones. So they think that it's a need for them to own one. Even now, we see that the kindergarten owns a phone. So by having a phone with technology with them all the time, it means they are spending time in nature less, and also there are more game addiction in youth. There are increasing game addiction in youth, and so each year I have a children camp where all the parents will send the kids to the farm to do the digital toxic. Because they say that they will not eat, they will not do anything, they will just play games, and then their mind will just stuck in the digital world. So sometimes when the problems with this, I think it's very important to think about, because sometimes they become they don't know how to react face-to-face interaction. They are more likely to want to be the digital interaction. So when it comes to face-to-face interaction, they need to practice, and they also need to learn more about the environment, to be polite, to be humble, because in the digital world, sometimes they can be anyone, they can say anything. So I think that there's a gap that we have to learn, and it's one of the challenges. And also not just about kids or children, but now we can see in the society, the elder people or even the everybody where we sit having dinner, people will not talk to each other. They will basically more on the phone, talking to, chatting with your friends over across the world, while your parents or someone who's sitting next to you asking you a simple question, but you don't answer because you are focusing on the digital world, on the social. And then one more thing, that the suicide crime rate is increasing because the digital world as well, that you need to be pretty, you need to be socialized, you need to have this, have that, to be able to fit into the social. Now we're not, if you're not on Facebook, that means you're out of date, you feel you're left over the society. So there are some challenges that we need to think about in an environmental way, that also sometimes simple communication are needed, and now there are more people are seeking for the digital toxic and the health problems related as well. I think that it's the one main aspect, that one challenge is that how can we still use the technology, but also in an appropriate way and in a suitable way, not too much and not too little, but each one of us need to have like the right amount of time, the right amount of technology, so that we don't forget about the cultures and about the culture differences as well. How sometimes, and we are Thai, and sometimes the digital is usually in English, or in sometimes it's make people cannot access into the same with people around the world. So I think these are challenges, but there are some opportunities that for the digital transformation, that it helps us collect the big data from the customers we have around the world, and also especially collecting big data from growing different plants to forecast the best productivity, to increase our productivities as well. And also with the better technology right now with the AI, can help us forecast the weather, the weather, and also the productivity. So I think that's very helpful in organic farming. And also that we are applying the paperless in the company, because during this digital transformation is allow us to collect all the data we needed. We don't need a bigger room to keep more papers. Yeah, we can save the paper, save time, and save space. Yes, but I think one of the challenges is for people to understand, to learn to change the transformation in the start, that from the paper to the paperless that they're used to. And also, I think that one of the biggest opportunity is that we can access about learning in farming in the digital world anywhere from the world. And also it allows us to promote our sustainable development around the world on the internet. So from just for Thailand, not just for Thailand, but it's for the whole, around the globe that can come and visit us to see the model, and also to learn from each other in a different cultures as well. So I think that's a very good opportunities. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Kitaphanich, for sharing with us some of the challenges and opportunities. It's very true that sometimes digital transformation, we also see that it's not always eco-friendly. It also has the green initiatives, but sometimes it's not really eco-friendly. And it actually highlights some of the gaps and some of the differences in socioeconomic disparity. So whenever we have like tasks from the schools, for example, or from the university, or even in the public, the private sector, for example, companies who have like more advanced technology, they can have like bigger chance to gain profit, for example. For the students, those who have better access or equipment to technology, most likely, not all the time, most likely they have these resources to maybe become better in gaining resources, in having experiences other than those who don't even have, for example, a mobile phone. We had with the other youth representatives, we had this interesting discussion, ladies and gentlemen. We are talking about how we also need to put how digital transformation is an investment, not only to the student, but to the family. So they understand how important it is for their children, for themselves as parents as well, to learn how to use the digital technology. You can imagine, for example, in one family, if only one there's only one mobile phone, for example, and they have 3 children, how can they go to school during the pandemic? So again, infrastructure disparity in socioeconomic, it's one of the gaps that still need to be addressed. And before I proceed with follow-up questions to our panelists, maybe we can invite, is there any questions from the floor? We have 10 minutes of discussion. Maybe those who are participating in person have any questions. Maybe the committee can help if there's any questions from the floor. Sorry, I cannot see. I wish to be there, but is there anyone raising the hand?
Hello. Hi, I have a question.
Yes, can you please state your name and then to whom your question wants to be directed to, and the question in a very short sentence. Thank you.
So my name is Suhua, and this question is for all the panelists. Since we're on the topic of youth, right, and youth leadership as well, how do we empower youths to feel certain and secure in their journey of building their career? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sofa, for the question. How we can empower them to feel certain and also secure that they want to continue their work in addressing digital divide. I see Dr. May wants to answer first.
So I think that when you're uncertain, it's always helpful to have a map. And I want to take the example of Google Maps, which has allowed many of us to travel and move to new places, and we can be less uncertain because we have a map. We can see the different roads and how to go. I think for youth to have more confidence, if we had more maps available, like a Google Maps for digital transformation, a Google Maps for youth enterprise, let's do that.
Thank you very much, Dr. May. It's a very clear picture about how the youth can also use their own maps. Maybe I would like to invite Mr. Fabian, and if you want to highlight your programs or your earlier collaborations or partnership for the youth, you can also share with us.
Okay, I think I'll address the question earlier was about how do you make them feel secure. Okay. Forgive me if I misinterpret it, but for me, when you talk about secure, it covers 2 things, right? Of my mind. One is, of course, cybersecurity aspect of making sure that all your transactions are safe, nobody hacks into you or get into your information from anywhere or any service providers. That's one aspect. But for youth particularly, I think one issue that is of concern to us is cyberbullying. I don't know if that's the intention of the question, but this is something that we need to address, because I think more and more you see, suicide-related cases, related to cyberbullying. So there should be programs, in our, whether it's formal or informal, what do you call it, programs in school or otherwise that have to, that addresses the issue of cyberbullying. I think it's a problem, and in fact, I've yet to. I mean, I have seen programs run by those outside the government. I mean, civil service society, civil, service societies, and also other NGOs. But for government, I think it's time to acknowledge that this is something that we need to address. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fabian, for highlighting that. That's one of the big issue among the youth, not only cyberbullying, cyber security, but also the threat from intolerance, hoax, the spread of violent extremisms around in the digital platforms. This is maybe one of the potentials how public and private partnerships they can work together, how to ensure, to accelerate the digital growth, the economic growth in one hand, but also securing and making everyone, not only the youth, everyone to feel safe in doing their activity in the online platform. I would like to give the floor to Ms. Doan to answer the question.
I think that in terms of like the youth, they can only have like the assurance and trust in themselves if we also like have the trust in them, because like they were born in this digital era. And I think that when I work with like younger generation, even like someone who was born in the year 2000 or 2005, I can never stop like being amazed at like how quick and how fast they can adapt, and for them, like it's very natural to learn some like new language in terms of programming and how to use like the computer and that kind of stuff. So I think in terms of capability, they are like natural in that one. And what they need as the security and like is of course like the roadmap of what is this career is leading to. And the second one is that on the young population, they are more aspiring and inspired by not only like making a living, but also like to contribute something to this world. And again, I want to highlight, even though I work in technology field, but I always feel that it's a tool. It's not like our master, but like we should treat like technology as the tool so that like we can scale up and we can like make even more impact onto the world.
So with that, let me just add on one question to the point which you mentioned. My real worry is, when I look at the kids, we all come from monkey to human. Now, during our time, or rather my time, I got my first mobile phone at 25 or 26. Now, a 1-year-old is start playing with smartphone. 2 years he starts playing with. Even as parents, we give the phone to them to distract when they make a voice. The two questions are there is, yes, they are fast learner, they are very intelligent, but the social skills, because they're not going to the field, they're not meeting people, they are living in a virtual world. We talk about meta world, but they're already living in a meta world. They do all kind of things. So my worry is the next generation of people, when they come in, do they have an eye-to-eye contact? Can they build on it? Yeah. Or are we destroying one full generation back to the monkey age? People going down, neckies like this and all kind of issues. I don't know the solution, though we can say that parents should be the role model, but we ourselves are culprit. We are always on phone. But I don't know what solutions you have, from your experience. How do you bring the change other than discipline? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your question. It's a good point, how we cannot leave behind the ethics, how we cannot leave behind the social aspects when we want to accelerate the technology and digital transformation, because there's always the cost. And during this pandemic, the students, for example, they don't have interaction with their peers. They don't have the sense of, working on together and finding solutions. There may be, after the pandemic, I don't know if we ever gonna have post-COVID, but it's gonna be an awkward also, like they have to adjust themselves. And this is the human aspects, how when we talk about technology, the aspects of humanity, the aspects of these social skills is all, we cannot leave this behind. Maybe for our next two speakers, Ms. Kitaphanich and also Mr. Siriwat can address also these questions from our last question, sorry. Maybe Ms. Kitaphanich, you want to start first?
Yes, yeah. As I said before, that there's opportunities and challenges for the digital transformation that we know already, that there's always a good side and always a bad side. But I think that we cannot, if we have to make a good side aspect bigger than the bad side aspect, if we know that there are the cyberbully, there are many bad things, then we have to concentrate on the good thing as well, so that the kids know that you can use the appropriate technology. For example, that I say that we have an English camp, or we have a children's camp in a farm. We say that you can have a time on your phone, but however, if you have provide the appropriate activities for them to play in the field, in the nature, they will forget about their phones. They know that, okay, because they are using their phone because they are bored, they have nothing to do. The parents are busy as well. And then so they because I have a conversation with the kids as well, why you are playing games, because I say that you're allowed to use the phones whenever you want in my farm. So I'm not gonna keep your mobile phone with me, but I will leave it with you. So they were amazed, because for them, the parents forced them not to play. So when you say no to the new generation, they are trying to force to challenge more. So I think that making them to have a good understanding about using mobile phone in a proper way, they will have a balance of using technologies and as well enjoying life in their real lifetime as well. So I think that by talking communication with your kids, I think, and then let them see that you can play in the nature, and then you can participate in the real world. Participation, interaction is needed, and make them feel free to be who they are, so that they don't have to be like someone else in the cyber world. So they could have a balance of the cyber world and the real world. So I think that is my answer.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kitaphanich, for addressing this. It's important also now that we are also adjusting to this. After 2 years of pandemic, we are also adjusting, we are exploring ways. It's very important to give this in-person interaction, but also to trust them at the same time. Mr. Siriwat, your responses.
Thank you, sir, for your question. It's very thought-provoking, definitely. I think if we look back in time throughout history, how human communication has evolved and developed over time. I mean, we started with face-to-face interaction, you know, engravings and carvings on the wall, to writing letters, telephone, radio, television. But at the end of the day, humans are still human. We like to express to each other. We tell stories. We like that feeling of social and physical interaction, and I don't think that will ever change. However, I do agree with you, definitely, as we move forward and advance in telecommunications technology from 1G, 2G, 3G, all the way now to, let's say, 5G, it's becoming more dangerous. If I could just share with you a quick story, I have a 3-year-old nephew, right? He can pick up a phone. He can send voice messages. He can take pictures. Sometimes he sends me videos. He's asking me, what am I doing? He can even access TikTok. Right? He can create videos. He knows how to match the music with his dancing and the right moves. He knows how to share the post and boost it, promote it. So this just shows that, you know, the new generation, 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, they're born into the digital age, right? They're born with a screen in their hand. They're connected to the internet. They're integrated to cyberspace. So I think that, you know, moving forward, it's important that it's not only an issue about the kids, because I'm not afraid to admit, even myself, I have some problems, you know, putting down the phone sometimes. You know, my partner sometimes gives me some trouble for that. I think even adults, my parents, they also have, you know, in the last few years using their phone more and more. So I think it's a problem for everyone, because our phones, right, our smartphones have not only become a mobile device, right? Mobile means that it's something separate or something independent, but actually it's become an extension of our body. It's almost like an appendage, right? We wake up every morning, we check our phones, we go to sleep, we put our phone down. So I don't like to think too dark into the future, you know, that we will become, let's say, all integrated through chips and so on. But it's definitely, we have to be careful that it's not just an issue for kids, that as technology moves forward, we have to remind ourselves that, we're still human, we like to interact, and technology should be a tool, but not to replace us in all aspects. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Siriwat, to share the stories as well. It's the fact actually how we see the younger and younger generations. They are so not only tech savvy, but it's part of their life, and it's also the responsible like app for all of us, everyone, to how to ensure that they still have they have exposure to the human to human interactions as well. And it's a very good discussion from the technical aspects, and also from, and we are not only talking about the digital divide from the technical point of view, about how the digital companies, social enterprises, but we also touch upon the aspects of the threats of what are the current situations, what are the threats, what are the opportunities, so we can close this digital divide, we can minimize it, but at the same time, we don't, we also take into account the accelerator factors, but we can also give the trust, we can empower the youth to make actions, to give initiatives, to put in the mindset. I want to recall again what are the words said by our fellow speakers. When Mr. Fabian said about curiosity, in this panel, we listen from the stories of our panelists, how the youth, they are very interested, they want to participate. We learned about is the curiosity is not only from the youth, but also how the other sectors, from the public, from the private, they want to also explore, how they want to include from the aspect of inclusion. Thank you, Mr. Fabian, for sharing with us. We also heard directly the success stories from Miss Doan Kieu from her direct experience with the YellowBlocks and Create 42, and how from her experiences she wants to continue their work, wants to go back to their country, and wants to elevate and empower the other youth to take part in this, and finding the gaps between the private and public sectors, becoming this bridge, but at the same time to give the spaces, amplify the voices, how the youth can also give solutions and untap their potentials. From Ms. Sirivimol Kitaphanich, we heard about when she said about inspirations, when she shared her points from the sustainable point of view, from the eco-friendly point of view, when we are discussing about digital divide, when we are trying to bring the aspect of economic digital transformation and economic acceleration together, we should never also forget the aspect of environmental. It's a very interconnected, so we thank you so much for your contribution, how we can also hear the inspirations from the youth as well. And from Mr. Siriwat, we heard so many things, important things from the aspect of how the youth digital leaders programs, so many capacity building should be tailored based on who are the participants, what are their needs. So when we heard directly from him that there should not be only one standardized, but it's really tailored into the need. It's very important for the privates, the public sectors, but also the CSOs, youth organizations, how they can also find how they can accelerate, they can improve, they can minimize these gaps, including what by taking into account what they need. Thank you so much for reminding us the importance of mindset. Last but not least, thank you, Dr. Maylin Fung, for sharing with us the importance of ensuring that everyone has internet coverage access, for sharing with us there are already things happening, like how to minimize this gap from the telecom companies. We hope that there will be more private public partnerships in providing these digital infrastructures. And thank you also for sharing sharing with us about the energy and the hunger to learn more from the youth. I think it's a very important and it's a very great message in this session. So, Excellencies, honorable speakers, ladies and gentlemen, we have come towards the end. That was some of the summaries, but I cannot thank enough our speakers. Once again, please give a big round of applause to Mr. Fabian, Miss Doan, Miss Sirivimol, Mr. Chhem, Dr. Maylin Fung for their contributions in this panel, Digital Divide, Closing the Digital Divide, Youth and Social Enterprises. Thank you for your questions and your participations. Forgive me if there's any inconveniences during this session, but thank you so much for trusting me as well as a moderator for this important summit, for having a youth leading as a moderator. This is one of a great example of youth inclusion and also for trusting the youth. So it really, really gives a good message from the summit. Congratulations to organizers. Thank you to all the speakers, and I will give the floor back to the MC. Thank you very much.